Hey gunfighters, you guys want to get nerdy today on barrels? Today's going to be a barrel nerd out. Not an exhaustive list, we're going to dive into a lot of different aspects of barrels. The length, the material, the rifling, the finishes, all that. That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, ballistics, equipment, today barrels. The right way, with almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I'm going to throw in a rapid fire, down and dirty bio. Real quick, we'll get into the main topic. Blessed to have served in the military, law enforcement, combat veteran, private contractor, competition shooter, lifelong hunter, guide. Blessed by God that He got me through all those things so I could share this firsthand training, knowledge, experience with you to serve you today. Let's dive into the podcast. Now, as you might imagine, I come at this from a practical end-user standpoint of barrels. The caveat, I'm not a metallurgist. I'm not a molecular chemist. I'm not a mathematician. You could go a lot deeper into each one of these subjects. Even though this is going to be a nerdy episode, you could go a lot deeper into each one of these rabbit holes of subcategories and barrels that we're going to talk about today. But with that said, let's jump into it. The first one, we're going to talk about actual caliber. The size of the bore. We often misuse the term caliber and will apply to like 30-06, but 30-06 is a cartridge. The caliber is 30 caliber. And there's a lot of different 30 calibers, the most common being .308. And even that, right? We call something a 30 caliber, the Russians call something a 30 caliber, but their 30 caliber is a .12, or 3.12 rather, instead of a .308. Like our 7.62 NATO, which is the same as 308 in millimeters, that's a .308 diameter bullet. Their 7.62 by 39 is a .312 diameter bullet. So even there we get nerdy. And a lot of that discrepancy is the way we measure things. Sometimes you can name or measure a bullet based on the lands or based on the grooves of the rifling. Sometimes you could just name it something because you think it sounds cool. It's not even that caliber. 38 special is not 38 caliber. So there's some confusion there. Just want to talk about that a little bit. And let's talk about, as far as caliber goes in general, it's measured two ways real quick. I'm not aware of any other common ways that modern rifles and pistols are measured. Obviously shotguns have gauges. Sometimes big rifles can have bores. Naval guns and artillery measure differently, but generally you measure in standard or metric. Standard being fraction of an inch, like 25 caliber, .25 caliber is 1/4 of an inch. 50 caliber, .50 caliber is half an inch. You can also measure it in metric, like 9 millimeter, 10 millimeter. So there's your two basic ways. Let's move on to something else here. Let's move on to barrel length. Now, there are exceptions, and there are a few common exceptions, but for most common cartridges and common lengths of rifles or handguns, the longer the barrel, the more velocity you're going to get, even within the same caliber, right? Because it works based on physics. It works based on the powder. If you think about the powder charge in a cartridge as its potential energy, that potential energy gets turned into kinetic energy, realized energy. There's a certain amount of power potential in that cartridge in the powder. The powder is a little bit in the primer, but the explosive potential is contained inside that cartridge. Not all of that propellant in most modern rifles and handguns is completely realized inside the barrel. So in general, the longer the barrel, the more velocity you're going to get. It doesn't work like the box says it's 1,210 feet per second. Therefore, my gun is shooting 1,210 feet per second. It does not work like that. A lot of variables come into play. Things as nerdy as, the humidity outside and your altitude. But much more impactful is your barrel length. So realizing that barrel length really has an effect on, even within a given cartridge, its velocity, like a 9mm. You take a same 9mm load, let's say your classic Winchester white box 115 grain ball ammunition. You shoot that out of a little teeny micro 9 with a 2-inch barrel, or you shoot it out of a full-size 1911 chambered 9mm with a 5-inch barrel. You're going to get dramatically different velocity, which is going to give you dramatically different amounts of energy, even though you're shooting the same cartridge. And of course, that's a trade-off, right? People carry those small guns not because they're more effective, not because they're as powerful or as easy to shoot, because they're convenient. The same thing with a rifle, until you get to the ridiculous. But with something like a 30-06, right, you're going to get more velocity out of a 20-inch barrel than a 16-inch barrel. You're going to get more velocity still out of a 22, more still out of a 24, more still out of a 26, more still out of a 28. But you get to a point where the guns become so unwieldy if you're actually using them in the field that the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? I don't want to walk through the bush with a 30-inch barrel 30-06. It's a little ridiculous. But until you get to a really, really long barrel in general, the longer barrel is going to give you more power, more velocity for a given cartridge. So barrel length is often important. A lot of people will look at 308, and they'll look at like a 308 numbers for like a standard 22-inch barrel. And then they'll get a 16-inch barrel in some kind of tactical platform or some other kind of rifle, and they think that they're getting the same ballistics, but you're not. You're probably getting more different ballistics going from a 16-inch barrel 308 to a 22-inch barrel 308 than you would be getting from, let's say, a 30-06 22-inch barrel and a 308 22-inch barrel. There's probably a greater difference just in barrel length if you're talking about jumping down to a 16-inch barrel in a lot of common modern rifles. So realize that. One notable exception, and it depends on the load, but 22 long rifle, it doesn't have a lot of powder capacity. It doesn't have a lot of potential energy in there. You can actually start to slow that bullet down in what I would say normal practical size rifle barrels. You might get more velocity out of a 16-inch barrel than you would out of a 20-inch barrel in a 22. There are other advantages. It's probably quieter, even without a suppressor in a 20-inch barrel, but you get the idea. That's my one common exception. But don't be nerding out on what the box says about velocity and don't take into account the barrel length. Barrel length, I think, is one of those things that's often overlooked in modern rifle cartridges or pistol cartridges, right? If you think that the velocities that are printed on the box in 9mm for a full-size combat handgun, which is what they're likely to be, you're shooting it out of a little teeny micro 9, don't expect to get those same velocities. That's not how that works. And we talked about width. That's generally how calibers work. Let's move on and talk about chambers. Even within a given caliber, right? They're not all the same. You could have a really tight chamber, which will generally give you the best accuracy. You could have a really, really loose chamber, which will generally give you the most reliability, but not as much accuracy. So there's a trade-off there. If we go to the world of pistols, it's generally known that Glocks do not have a fully supported chamber. Glocks also are not known for accuracy, and there's a lot that plays into that, but that loose chamber is part of that. But the fact they have a giant, they have a very accommodating chamber. They'll chamber a lot of rounds. They don't have a really specific tolerance. That also means they're not really known for accuracy. That also means sometimes they'll bulge brass because it's not what we would call a fully supported chamber. Whereas a really tight match chamber, a really, really tight chambered precision handgun barrel is likely going to be more accurate. But because of it being so tight, it may be a little bit more discretionary as to what ammo it will feed on and what it won't. So chamber, if you look at the world of rifles, like don't get a super high-end precision rifle in 308 and expect it to chamber every garbage, cheap range fodder, steel-cased ammo you're going to throw in it. It might not. And not because it's a bad rifle, because you wanted a precision rifle. That denotes a very tight chamber, and that's a good thing. Don't expect, if it's a really tight chamber, to feed every single different round, because there can be a lot of variance between one loading and another. We're talking about, thousandths of an inch, but that can make a difference in a really tight chamber, especially if you're talking about a really common cartridge, 30-06, 308, right? There's a lot of different manufacturers of that stuff from all around the world. So you get a really loose chambered 308 that'll probably feed just about everything. You get a really tight chamber that may not feed some things, but maybe is more accurate. So like many things in the firearms world, the chambering, the chamber cut itself is a trade-off. Let's talk about muzzle crowns. The muzzle, the end of the barrel the bullet comes out of. That concentricity of the end of the barrel is super, super important. The crown, the very end of that rifling, the grooves cut in the barrel, that is super important. If you damage that, that can really have a detrimental impact on your accuracy. So really be careful when you're messing with the crown on that handgun or rifle. Do yourself a favor and don't clean your gun with a cheap, segmented Walmart or similar cheap store aluminum 3-piece cleaning rod. Rather, you just didn't clean your gun at all. Those things probably do more damage to your barrel than you're helping it by cleaning it, especially if you're scratching up the end of the crown of your barrel. Crowns are really important, and I think another thing that, like barrel length, are often overlooked. There are different kinds of crowns. There's the target crown. There's an 11-degree target crown. There's a 90-degree crown. There's a 45-degree crown. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. I'll tell you one thing that I really like on hard-use guns is a protected crown, however you achieve that. I often like guns with a threaded barrel just so I can put something on there to protect the crown. I don't even care about the flash suppressor, muzzle brake, silencer. I care about not banging that crown up and destroying the accuracy potential of that rifle or pistol. So I think crowns are often overlooked. Since we talked about it, let's get a little bit into nerdiness of, a lot of modern handguns and rifles come with a threaded barrel. You could just keep the thread protector on there. You could put a muzzle brake. You could put a compensator on there, and there's no clear delineation, like it's a pretty gray area. You get some of one and some of another, maybe more of one and more of another. But in general, a brake really helps tame recoil. Often it's louder. A flash hider, a flash suppressor, generally helps do what it says and suppresses the flash. It may have a little bit of a benefit on recoil. So that's kind of the difference there, like your A2 birdcage. Flash hider, flash suppressor. That's common on many ARs. You also could put on a suppressor, a silencer, which you gotta pay the government and get your tax stamp and all that stuff. But those will make a gun quieter. Realize, especially if you're dealing with a supersonic round, faster than the speed of sound, like most modern rifle cartridges, and even many today common pistol cartridges. If it's faster than the speed of sound, it's still not going to be very quiet. It's still probably recommended that you wear hearing protection. But they will, in general, lower the decibels of a firearm, a suppressor, a silencer, whatever you want to call it. Now let's talk a little bit about rifling. Rifling is the grooves, spiral cut grooves cut into a barrel to spin the bullet, to give it I'm going to leave that in there because I don't feel like editing it. I have to be up pretty early in the morning. So rifling are the grooves cut into a barrel to give the bullet gyroscopic stabilization. There's been much ado recently, and I say recently, like the last 20 years, on twist rates. In days of yore, in general, a twist rate in a barrel was what it was, right? If you got a 30-06, it was likely a 1 in 10 twist. If you got a 308, it was likely a 1 in 12 twist. And generally, a caliber would have a designated twist rate. That's not really so today. You could get, a 308 with a 1 in 12 twist, a 1 in 10 twist, a 1 in 9 twist. You could get all kinds of twist rates for even a given caliber, a specific cartridge. And why is that? The faster the twist, to explain to you how that works real quickly, twist rate is how many inches of barrel it takes that bullet to make a full rotation. If it's a 1 in 7, it takes 7 inches for that bullet to achieve one complete rotation. If it's a 1 in 12, it takes a foot. It takes 12 inches for that bullet to achieve one full rotation. Different bullet lengths require different twist rates to stabilize them. And it's often talked about weight, like I need in a 5.56, I need a 1 in 8 or a 1 in 7 to stabilize a 77 grain bullet. But that's not really the proper way to look at it. It's just simpler. But it's the length of the bullet itself. The longer the bullet is, the more you have to spin it, which kind of makes sense, right? If it's a longer bullet, you got to spin it faster to keep it stable. If it's a short, fat bullet, it doesn't require as much. Just to give you the extreme, a common twist rate in a 9mm, which is a short, fat bullet, even if you talk about like a 147 heavy for caliber, it's a short, fat bullet compared to most rifles. Most 9mm have like a 1 in 16. A lot of modern ARs have like a 1 in 7. There's a lot of modern ARs to, I think, make up for some of the deficiency in killing power of the 5.56 223 cartridge. They've gone to heavier and heavier bullets. Originally designed for a 55 grain bullet, today a lot of people are shooting like the 77 grain bullets. That's a lot more bullet weight. And we've seen this progression from like a 1 in 14, a 1 in 12, a 1 in 9, a 1 in 8, a 1 in 7 twist barrel to stabilize these heavier and longer bullets. You could have a very long bullet that wasn't as heavy, and you'll see this commonly today with solid copper bullets. If we look at something like a 308, 150 grain classic cup and core lead copper jacketed bullet is going to be much shorter than a solid copper or monolithic, whatever you want to call it, 150 grain copper bullet, because copper is less dense than lead. That's how that works. So if they're both 150 grain, unless you get some crazy design parameter, the solid copper bullet is going to be longer than the lead bullet or the cup and core bullet. So twist rates, just in general, a longer bullet requires a faster twist rate. On the rifling itself, there are many different ways to cut rifling. I don't know how much you should worry about that as far as the end user. You'll often hear like cold hammer forged barrel, which basically means they have a negative image kind of rifling, and they put the barrel on it and they literally pound it with hammers. They pound it onto this, I want to say mandrel, but that may not be the right word, but they pound it onto this thing to give like a mirror image. Literally cold hammers. They're like, it's not heated up, and they pound this thing into submission to form the rifling. You can also have like broach cut, button cut rifling, which is where you drag a tool through the barrel and cut the rifling into it. Now, there are different applications where you may specifically want one over the other. But here's the deal. With modern practices and modern metallurgy and modern quality control, many times lots of different methods for cutting rifling can be absolutely good and absolutely accurate. So unless you know for some specific reason, like you're using it in a machine gun and you really want a cold hammer forged chrome lined barrel, which we'll get into linings in a minute, and coatings, you could get a really good broach cut or button cut barrel that's absolutely accurate. So keep that in mind. But just there are different ways to cut rifling in a barrel. There's more than one way to skin that cat. Well, I guess before we get into coatings and stuff, let's talk about barrel material itself. Chrome moly or chrome moly vanadium is just a really hard, real common barrel material, good modern barrel material, hard steel, decent barrel life. Another real common one is going to be stainless steel. Stainless steel is advantageous for the reason you might think. It stains less, gets less rust. It'll still rust, but it gets less rust. Those barrels won't last as long. And that's not the same for every caliber, right? Some calibers will last a lot longer than others. Higher pressures, smaller bores, something like a 220 Swift, which is a screaming fast 22 caliber round, is in general, if they're the same barrel material, same quality, gonna wear out. Let's just say you have two rifles, like two Tikka T3s, with the same barrel materials. Like a 220 Swift is gonna wear out a barrel with a lower round count than something like a 30-06 is. It just is, because of those factors: pressure, bore diameter, things like that. So just keep that in mind. But chrome molybdenum or chrome vanadium barrels are pretty common. Stainless steel barrels are also common. Stainless steel barrels, in addition to being stainless, they're often sought out by like target shooters because they're one homogeneous material throughout, which you're introducing a lot less issues or potential for issues than you are if you put other things into it. So stainless steel is known for staining less, also known for being very, very accurate. You can get other really accurate barrels. I'm just saying, in days of yore especially, stainless steel barrels kind of like a go-to for kind of long-range precision shooting. Now, there are a lot of coatings today. And one of the OG, you could just hear like a gun in the white, which means like the metal has no coating. Most firearm barrel materials today, if they're not stainless, will have a coating. And the old version of that is bluing. Bluing is basically kind of molecularly very similar to rust. It's like a pre-rust, so it doesn't rust as fast, if that makes sense. But that's basically what it was. And it can be very beautiful. It's not a great finish. It was the best they had at the time. So sometime after that, they came out with parkerization, which is another metal process. Instead of like a shiny, dark blue, black, purpley finish, it's just matte black kind of. That's kind of how you can tell. Somebody asked me how you could tell the difference between a blued steel and a parkerized. A nice blued steel barrel is kind of looking like into a deep dark pool or a deep dark well, how it's kind of shiny and reflective and dark. Parkerization is kind of like looking at a dirty grill that somebody cooked a bunch of meat on and hasn't cleaned. It's that black charcoal kind of not shiny matte finish. It was made for performance. It was put on a lot of military guns. It's not really made to be pretty. But it worked a little bit better at resisting corrosion and stuff like that than the bluing. Today there's all manner of coatings, and this probably won't be an exhaustive list, but things like Cerakote. And Cerakote is a big brand name, but there are others like it. Ceramicote, Durabake, some kind of ceramic coating that's pretty hard. Ceramic is a pretty hard material. Stands heat really well. Things like that. It's kind of impervious to a lot of environmental factors. So ceramic coatings like Cerakote, those are pretty cool. Some of them are baked on, some are done at room temperature, some are done at different temperatures. But that ceramic type coating, it has a bunch of different names. The big player in that is Cerakote, and it's a really good way to coat metal. There are other kind of ones. One that was big years ago, you don't see as much today, as like ion bond or some kind of ionic bonding process. And again, I'm not a metallurgist. If you're talking about aluminum, like on ARs and stuff like that, you'll see anodizing, which is just a way to coat the outside of aluminum, anodizing. We're talking about barrels here, so you're probably not going to see an aluminum barrel. But some kind of coating like that. There's a lot of modern ones. Kind of the gold standard for a long time. I think the Japanese may have been the first ones to mass do chrome lining in a barrel, and I think they did that in World War II, maybe a little bit before. But chrome lining, like I said, kind of the gold standard. If you're like, I want a really good battle-proven technology barrel, kind of the gold standard is cold hammer forged chrome lined barrel. Chrome lining. Chrome is really, really hard material. It's harder than most steels. Chrome is a really hard material. Chrome also doesn't rust. That's kind of why it's the gold standard. Now, you can have some really, really accurate chrome lined barrel because, quality control in the process can be done really, really well. But it does, you think about this, you're putting a coating inside the barrel, inside that rifling. So you can introduce more potential for imperfections. That said, you get a lot of benefits. Again, chrome doesn't rust. Now, you can strip the chrome lining out of a barrel over time, but chrome itself doesn't rust. It's also, if it's done right, fairly slick. Can aid in feeding, especially in dirty guns. And it in general doesn't react with things like salt water, sweat, blood, things like that. So it's a lot more forgiving of lack of cleaning. And it's harder, so it can greatly increase barrel life over something like a stainless steel barrel. If you have really good quality barrels and you have a really good quality stainless steel barrel and a really good quality chrome lined barrel, you'll generally get a lot more life out of the chrome lined barrel. That's going to depend on what load you're shooting through it, how long you're letting the barrel cool in between, which shooting, in rapid fire can really have a detrimental effect on barrels. Is one reason why most modern machine guns you're going to see are going to have a chrome lined barrel. But chrome lining is kind of the gold standard. A new kid on the block, but I think absolutely can be as good, is nitride. Nitride, ironically, on the outside kind of looks like the old school bluing. It's kind of a shiny, very attractive finish, but it's not bluing. It's not the same process as bluing. It's basically, as I understand it, a molten salt bath, which literally changes the molecular structure on the outside of the metal and can make it quite a bit harder. Whether it's as hard as chrome or harder than chrome, I don't know, but it's really, really hard on the Rockwell scale if it's a properly done nitride. It's also not like bluing in that it's really, really good and quite resilient to rust and corrosion and things like that. So nitride is not bluing. It may look like bluing, but it's completely different. It's like a hot molten salt bath, which does many things. And although chrome line is still kind of the gold standard, nitride, I think, may in many cases be better. It's kind of the newer generation of technology. A lot of people, I think, don't recognize it. They still want the chrome lined, and I really like chrome line too, but if I had a really done, like if I was choosing between ARs and one had a really well done, like QPQ, quench, polished quench is what that stands for, nitrided barrel, and one had a chrome line barrel, I think I would be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. They're both really good. So that's some of your common coatings on barrels. Well, let's talk about profile. Much like length, this is a trade-off. Now, you can have a really thin barrel is generally called a pencil barrel, and a really, really thick barrel, sometimes with little to no taper, is called a bull barrel. Now, a pencil barrel, if you let's say you have two barrels, both are 16 inches. One's a pencil barrel, one's a bull barrel. They're going to be drastically different in weight. Now, if you're just shooting, let's say, prairie dogs off of a table, really doesn't matter. That's why a lot of varmint guns have really thick, heavy barrels like that. Also, if you think about accuracy, the big thing there is consistency. If you have a barrel with more material, it's going to be less impacted shot per shot as far as changes in temperature, because you have a lot more material to absorb that heat. In general, you could have a really, really inaccurate bull barrel, and you could have a super, super accurate pencil barrel. But in general, if you shoot, let's say, a string of 10 rounds out of a bull barrel and a pencil barrel, you're going to see more dispersion. If you shoot a rapid fire 10 round string, you're going to see more dispersion out of that thinner barrel than a thicker barrel. And we go to the extreme pencil versus bull barrel. Probably wouldn't be making that choice. There's all kinds of different profiles, but just realize that in general. Now, if you let it completely cool, let's say you take a pencil barrel and a bull barrel that are both really well made, and you shoot a round and you let it cool down for 3 hours and you come back and shoot another round, you're basically shooting all cold bore shots. They could literally shoot exactly the same, or there probably isn't much degree of accuracy difference between one and another. If you shoot 2 or 3 or 10 rounds in a row, you're probably almost certainly going to see more dispersion in the pencil barrel because it's going to heat up quicker. But you have to carry it. So if you're carrying a gun, you got to kind of weigh that balance. Do you want a heavy barrel? Do you want a thin barrel? Really depends on your philosophy of use and what you're trying to do. One brief thing I'll mention is carbon fiber barrels. They've become more common in recent years. They're not new, but they've become a little bit more common, a little bit more affordable. Carbon fiber barrels kind of try and give you both. They are thick and big around like a bull barrel. You've got a lot of surface area, but carbon is a lot lighter. So generally you'll have like a thin pencil profile steel barrel. They're not all made out of carbon fiber. It's a carbon fiber sleeve over a metal barrel. But you have a thin profile barrel covered in carbon fiber, which can help disperse heat and doesn't weigh nearly as much as a traditional bull barrel. So those are kind of some technology. Also, fluting on the outside of the barrel, the idea there is you're increasing the surface area. Much like a radiator does in your vehicle, you get a really hot thing and you give it more surface area and it cools down more quickly. That's why you have a radiator in your car. Flutes, although not nearly as prolific in increasing surface area as a radiator, they do basically the same thing. They increase the surface area of the barrel, even greater than it would be if it was a traditional round barrel, while cutting weight out of the barrel. So fluting is another way that has been done in days past and is still done today. Reduces weight, increases surface area, can decrease your shot dispersion and the shot string. One thing, and this is specific to ARs, but one thing you'll see a lot is government profile barrel. And you might think, oh, government profile barrel, I want that, but you probably don't. That was done for reasons that probably don't apply to you. So that you can mount a 203 grenade launcher on a barrel as a cutout for doing that. That's the government profile barrel. Unless you plan on mounting an M203 grenade launcher on your gun, that government profile barrel doesn't really make a lot of sense. So that's what the government profile barrel is in a nutshell. And more, this is going on over 30 minutes, and that was a brief flyover, right? You could probably do several series of podcast episodes just on different rifling, just on different coatings, right? So this is a barrel nerd out, but a brief flyover. I realize there's people listening of all different knowledge levels. Maybe you know way more than I do about this barrels and barrel like subcategory subjects. But maybe you don't. Maybe you're looking at different barrels and you see one that's chrome lined and one that's stainless and you're like, what does that mean? Why do I care? Which one should I choose, right? This is kind of meant for that listener. I hope you enjoyed it. If you already knew all this stuff, please consider sharing this with somebody that knows a little bit less. Blessings are meant to be shared. If you like this podcast, consider sharing it with others. With that, your tactical tip of the day. If you're talking about your survival kit, bug out bag, baby bug out bag, bailout bag, whatever it is, try and think about multiple uses for an item, not just what it was advertised for. I'll give you an example. One key thing I think should be in most kits is triple antibiotic ointment. That's used for stopping wounds from getting infected, triple antibiotic ointment. It's also basically petroleum jelly with antibiotics in it. So you could use it for other things. You could use it to start a fire. It's basically petroleum jelly. All the ones that I'm aware of is petroleum jelly based. So you could use it for that. You could use it as a lubricant, because again, generally petroleum jelly based. So just a way to think outside the box there and think about other uses for common survival items. Your tactical verse of the day. This is from the Gospel of John. And these are red letter words, meaning Jesus, the words of Christ. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. I don't think I have to tell you we live in a pretty nasty world sometimes. Beautiful in God's creation, but people can be really nasty. It's a fallen world. But God doesn't make mistakes. He has us here in this time, in this place. He doesn't make junk. He doesn't make mistakes. We're here. Let us not get discouraged while doing good. Let us not get distracted from the mission, our primary mission. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment, and the second like it is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Those are also red letter words in your Bible. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.